He was chasing me, banging on the door, trying to rip open my car door.
Why are you weird?
Hi everyone, my name is Kaylie and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Okay everybody, happy Saturday. I know it's been low-key, long time no see. Please listen before we get into today's story time. I do want to put a PSA out there because I'll usually mention this in the end of my videos, and I don't know if like a lot of people stick around for that. But if you want to send in your anonymous story time, make sure to click the links down below in the description, and don't be afraid to send in a long story, okay? Like if you have a story that you're sitting there thinking, oh, it's too long, send it in, okay? I don't care if you talk into your phone, if I have to, you know, try to understand it a little bit because it may be a little bit confusing. I can always just email you and get more details, okay? Okay, let's get into today's story time. I'm gonna bring you guys up close. There we go. Okay, so for those of you who might be new here, I'm going to do my quick usual little rundown. For most of the video, I'll be looking in this direction because my mirror's over here and I would like to see what I'm doing. I do tell these story times in a first person point of view, so if you don't like that, then you can leave.
There's the door. There's the door, bitch!
And these story times are sent in by anonymous people. Okay, story time about my creepy stalker ex-boyfriend. So a little background information. I was 17 years old and in my senior year of high school. And during this time, things were not so great. I was going through a really bad rough patch with this guy who we're gonna call Dave, who also went to my school and just happened to be my boyfriend at the time. We were in a super toxic on and off relationship, and then we finally decided to end things for good for the third time. If you know, you know. Gotta love those relationships. But this time it was for real, as he literally blocked me on everything. We're already about to start getting into the rants. I'm telling y'all right now, if you have a significant other and you are stuck in that cycle, break it. At least before they do, okay? Because most of the time, if you're going through that back and forth on and off and things just aren't working, it's the same problems over and over and over again, and you really want things to work with that person but they're not changing, leave them first. Leave them first, seriously. Because if they're the ones to leave first, usually they always come back, you know, like that is true 99% of the time. But if you want them to change, leave first, because then they're gonna realize that behavior is not okay. But if you let it keep going on, they're gonna realize they can walk all over you. So yeah, before you get to that cycle, if you feel that cycle coming or if you're in that cycle, be the one to break it first, especially if you want things to work out with them. I know it seems so ass backwards, trust me, it works. Anyway, so yeah, like I said, he literally blocked me on everything and I was super heartbroken. But at that time, him and I were just in different stages of our lives. We both had super different opinions and outlooks on life. It just wasn't working anymore. Well, fast forward, the one night I am scrolling on Instagram when all of a sudden I get a follow request from a guy named Colton. Honestly, he wasn't that cute. Nothing about him really stood out to me. But I did see that multiple girls and guys were following him. Girls and guys that I knew from my school. So I decided to accept his follow request and then I went about my night. Well, fast forward to the next morning, I wake up to a DM from him saying that he thought that I was really cute and he would love for us to meet up. So, you know, I say thank you, and I didn't really care to meet up with him considering the fact that I was still going through the motions of getting over and grieving my past relationship. But, you know, him and I start making small talk and I ask him where he's from and how old he is. And it turns out that he's 19 and he lives about 15 to 20 minutes away from me. Apparently before he moved away, he had actually went to my high school, and that's why we have a lot of mutual friends, including my ex-boyfriend, Dave. Anyway, so I continued to talk to him. I still really wasn't feeling it. There was no interest in him romantically. But as the days went on, this man kept begging me to hang out. But in all honesty, I was super busy with my academics and friends. I really didn't care to be bothered by another guy, especially because, like I said earlier, I had literally just gotten out of my relationship with my on and off ex, who I was very much still in love with. But I mean, I did low-key feel bad because him and I had been talking and I wasn't really giving him a fair chance. So I finally caved, and the one day I told him that I was going to be studying at the library, but I could make some time for us to go and get coffee and then I would just go back to the library. Now in his pictures, he wasn't ugly, don't get me wrong, but he just wasn't my type. Like, at all. So that day, whenever I was ready to take my break from the library, I had told him that we could meet at a Dunkin' Donuts, so that way we could be in a safe public place in town where everybody knew my family, so I could get help if things between us during this meeting went south. because you never know, there's some freaking weirdos out there. Anyway, so he walks in looking like a bum. Like, there's no other nice way to put it. I mean, his pants were falling down. It looked like he hadn't gotten a shower in like a week. His hair was all messed up. Not in the hot, sexy way either. Overall, like I said, he just wasn't my type. He was short and skinny, and yeah. I immediately told myself that it was gonna be a no for me. But then I decided, because I'm already here, let's not be a dick. So, you know, I stay and we get to talking. We talked about our families, jobs, and etc. And he seemed like every other normal 20-year-old boy. Now, one thing to know about me is I am very ambitious and I really value education. Like, currently in my life right now, I'm still in college and I'm about to get my 3rd degree. And him, on the other hand, Colton, he did not value education like that. And even whenever I was 17, I looked at that and I was like, oh no, that ain't gonna work. I mean, he dropped out of high school when he was 16. You know what? We're not even gonna get into it, okay? I'm proud of myself because I decided to keep an open mind and try not to be too judgmental, especially because I didn't know his full situation. Well, after talking to him more, I found out that Colton actually came from a very unprivileged home. His father left him as a child, his mother was an alcoholic, and his older brother had gotten married and moved away. Which, unfortunately, this basically forced Colton to step up to the plate, you know, cook, clean, and care for his mother. Now, myself, on the other hand, I come from the typical American family. I have 4 siblings, 2 loving parents who had good jobs, a beautiful house, everybody had good education, and etc. Now, my parents had always encouraged my sisters, brother, and I to do as good as we can in life, obviously. Well, for Colton, it seemed like his mom didn't even know what day of the week it was sometimes. Anyway, so the hangout went okay. We had only been talking for about like 2 weeks before this, and my original plan was to, when this date was over, leave and block him, and that'll be that. Like, he wasn't my type look-wise, and he seemed to have a lot of health and emotional issues, which I'm not judging him for. Like, don't do that. But overall, I just didn't feel any connection. So as we get up to leave, you know, he's asking me what I'm doing after this. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go back to the library and study because I have a really important exam coming up. And then, you know, he tells me, oh, you're beautiful and I had a really nice time talking to you, blah, blah, blah. Like I said, he was super nice. Like, I really enjoyed his personality, but he was not what I needed in my life during that time, as I was literally planning on leaving for college in less than a year. Anyway, so, you know, I go back to the library, I walk in, find my seat, and after being there for only a few minutes, I see Colton enter the library doors, wave at me, and come sit next to me. He started telling me about how he didn't want that to be the end of the date, and he wanted to talk to me for just a little bit longer. And to be honest, I didn't consider that a date. I didn't care for him that way, and I paid for my own coffee. It was literally just like a meetup. So then I tell him that we can spend 10 minutes outside talking, but then I really need to get back to what I was doing. So, you know, we go outside, I'm talking to him, and he was telling me how he felt such a great connection between us, and he really wanted me to be his girlfriend.
Oh, hell no.
And I was speechless. Like, we just started talking 2 weeks ago. I just for the first time met you in person 45 minutes ago, and you want me to be your girlfriend. I literally didn't even know what to say. Like I said, absolutely speechless. To be honest, this should have been my first red flag. So, you know, I politely tell him I didn't feel the same connection that he felt, and he needed to leave because I needed to get back to my work. So he left upset, obviously, and I was left feeling a little bit creeped out. Not gonna lie. Well, when I got home that day, I was about to block him, but then I saw a really nice message that he sent me. He was like, I'm sorry for being so persistent, but I just really like you, and I feel like you're someone that I could really see myself with. So what do? I tell him again, I'm sorry, I didn't feel that way, but maybe we could be friends. And maybe we could meet up a second time. So after another 2 weeks goes by of him persistently texting and calling and trying to make plans with me, which, by the way, like, I was rarely answering the phone. Like, this man was committed. Anyway, so he asked me to hang out again for the millionth time. And I did start to feel like I was super focused on my ex and school, that maybe it would be good for me to give myself a break and give him an actual chance. I also started to think that maybe I was comparing him to my ex subconsciously and not giving him a complete judgment-free chance like everybody deserves. Well, let me tell y'all, he surprisingly wowed me. He took me to a super nice dinner, He dressed up. He looked like he showered. He wasn't talking about any sort of relationship shit. It was like a completely different person. So then I started to think to myself, okay, well maybe like 2 weeks ago whenever we met up, he was just going through a really rough time. Maybe he caught feelings quicker than he thought he was going to, and he was nervous, blah, blah, blah. After that, I really wasn't too focused on how things had went the first time that him and I met up. So after that time, I was like, all right, whatever, sure, I'll keep going on dates with you. So fast forward, after our third date and 2 months of us talking, I decided that I would give it a try and be his girlfriend. But almost instantly, as soon as I became his girlfriend, things changed. He literally just like reverted back to the guy that I had met on the first date. I was like, what the fuck just happened? He started becoming super unhygienic again, dressing really bad, which I know you guys are probably thinking, okay girl, like chill out. Like people get more comfortable around you whenever they're in a relationship. I understand that, but he was making me pay for everything, literally everything. And he had way more issues than I thought. Like he eventually started talking about us moving in together, starting a family after 1 week of us being together. It honestly gave me really bad anxiety, and I had plans for myself. And I'm not gonna lie, I did not see a boy or a family being a part of that plan. Also, I literally just turned 17. Anyway, so I kind of started noticing some issues. Like I had known that his mom had a problem with alcohol, but it was way more severe than I thought. I would go over there, and at around 3 in the afternoon, she is drunk off her ass, falling asleep with lit cigarettes while she's on the couch. Him and his mom would get into screaming matches where they would throw things at each other and just become super violent. Usually during those times, I would just leave because I didn't want to be there for that. I felt super uncomfortable. And you know, after I would leave, he would text me apologizing, saying that, you know, he's sorry and he can't deal with his mom anymore, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I would feel really bad for him because nobody should have to live like that. Like his mom would be going to the bars all day, never be present in any conversation, passing out in the living room with a bottle of vodka and a lit cigarette in her hand. Like I felt bad for both of them, but I saw that she did not want to change. Like she had no plans on becoming better. And he also enabled that behavior. He would regularly give her rides to the bar and or the liquor store, and even was just constantly taking care of her instead of telling her, get your ass up and do your shit. And he wouldn't even dare mention anything to her about getting help. Because of all of his issues going on at home, we just decided that we weren't gonna see each other there or hang out there at all. And my mom had known that I was dating him, but once she met him, she immediately disliked him. She said that he seemed to have no motivation and there was something just really off about him. So we didn't go to my house either. So, you know, we would go out and go hiking, go out to eat, and do a bunch of other activities. But I started to notice a pattern. He never had money and I was always stuck with the bill. And I had worked since I was 15 years old and saved almost every single penny. And I was super proud of myself because after 2 years of working hard, I had almost $5,000 in my bank account. Obviously, I saw a very fast decline in money in my bank account because I couldn't keep up with the money that was being spent. Like he would always want to go out to eat, or he would want me to buy him new clothes, and he would constantly make promises to pay me back, but y'all can already guess how that went. So then I start asking him about his job and why he never had any money. I was fed up with the shit, as I should be. And in the beginning of our relationship, he would tell me that he was paying for bills for his mom and him. That's why he couldn't pay for things, you know, because she was always drinking. He had to pay for their living expenses because she didn't work either. And because of this, again, I felt bad because my mother and father made me feel like I never owed them anything. Like, they didn't ever do that to my siblings or I. But after 1 month of us being together, he finally told me that he quit his job 2 weeks after our second time meeting up. And that's why he was broke. All of a sudden, everything just started piling up. And I was really starting to doubt being with him. Like, why would you lie about having a job for over a month? Even to the extreme where he would literally not text me for hours because he was, quote, at work. Like, at that point, just get a fucking job. What are you doing with your days? Anyway, so after he started to be honest, finally, he then became super controlling. He would get extremely angry when I wouldn't answer his text messages right away, or whenever he tried to call me and I couldn't get to the phone fast enough. My weekends were for him. It even got to the point where he would show up at my work to make sure that I was really there. Y'all, this sounds like a love bombing situation. I know that most of you probably know what love bombing is. If you don't, be careful whenever you first get into a relationship with somebody or you first start talking to somebody and they're doing all these sweet things, you know, for you to make you feel so loved and cared for. Because when they do too much of that early on, that is usually a sign of love bombing, because as soon as they know that they have you, that person that was doing all that is dead and gone. Like that person had never even existed. It was all a show. So be super careful whenever people are doing that. It might seem sweet at first, but just remind yourself that things should not move that fast in a relationship where they're asking you out literally a day after meeting you, as in this case. So yeah, you know, only a month into our relationship and he was already acting like a psycho. Honestly, I was extremely scared to see what would have happened if this relationship went on longer than it did. But I was also scared of leaving knowing that he's mentally and emotionally essentially f***ed up. So, you know, then he eventually opens up about his dad and says how his dad's actually really successful, and I made sure to look that one up because I wasn't about to be fooled again by this man. And it ended up being true. He had a very nice house, he had a wife and kids, but his dad left due to his mom's substance abuse issues. And he felt like he was just losing himself being married to her. Well, it also turns out that Colton's mom didn't allow him to speak to him or see him, including his brother, because the dad had left. She was like, no, screw him, he left. Like, I don't want you guys seeing or talking to him. But when I found this out, I had tried to encourage Colton to talk to him. You know, let him know that you would love to get to know your family and him. So eventually him and his dad did end up meeting up, and his dad told his side of the story, which ended up checking out way more than the mom's side, to be honest. Anyway, so the one night I needed to go home because it was a school night and my mom was blowing up my phone since it was a school night. Well, when I told him that I needed to leave, he kept begging me to not go and just stay the night. And I tried to explain to him and get it through his little brain that I'm 17 years old and I had school in the morning and I could not spend the night over my 20-year-old boyfriend's house. No, it wasn't happening.
Dumbass bitch.
So then he started to become super annoyed that I couldn't stay over, and he told me that I was just using my mom as an excuse because I didn't want to stay there. He kept saying this after I had showed him the long list of text messages from my mother telling me to get my ass home. Like he had somehow convinced himself that I put my mom up to saying all of this. So when I got up and grabbed my stuff and I began to leave, he pushed me up against the wall and started to choke me, telling me that I couldn't leave him. Well, when he finally took his hands off of my neck, I told him, this is the last time that we're gonna be seeing each other. So then he began to cry, and then he told me that he was gonna kill himself if I broke up with him. Y'all already know how I feel if y'all have watched my previous videos. I don't care if somebody says they're gonna kill themselves, you need to go. Leave that person. If they're gonna do it, that is not your problem. Don't involve yourself in that. And if you're the person that says that to somebody whenever you're breaking up with them, shame on you. Seriously, I have no sympathy for you at all. Ridiculous. So then I told him, I can't be responsible if you choose to die. And then I told him the way that he's been treating me is concerning, especially after us only being together for 2 months. Less than 2 months, actually. So I leave the house. I don't speak to him for a while. Eventually, he asks me if we can talk. And to be honest, I left some things at his house that I really wanted back. So I decided, okay, whatever, I'll go talk to him. So I go to his house. We talk. He apologizes, saying that he's gonna go to therapy and he'll get a job if I don't leave him, blah, 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 blah. I told him, listen, I don't know, because I want you to want to do that stuff for yourself. Like, bro, like, I can't deal with this again. And then again, he threatens to end his life. Obviously, I felt bad for him. I felt guilty. I was being emotionally manipulated by a piece of shit. And then he was like, if I kill myself, it's gonna be your fault. So I decided I would give him another chance. Yeah. Yes, I did. But mainly because I didn't want to have the weight of that on my shoulders. I want to put a trigger warning in here for SA. If this topic makes you uncomfortable, please skip to this part of the video. Well, after this, he then proceeded to me that night without a condom. He told me that he wanted me to have his kids, and never in my life have I not used a condom before, even though I had only had sex once before this with my ex-boyfriend, who I was in love with and who didn't force me into it. And I had never had sex with him because we were only in a relationship for less than 2 months. Like, I wasn't comfortable with that. So he ended up, yeah, doing that. And me being 17 and going to college in less than 6 months, I left his house feeling super violated. And I ran to the nearest pharmacy to get a Plan B. And I ate that shit up right away because you got me so fucked up if you think that I'm about to carry a psycho's kid. No. Hell to the no. Well, after a week of me ignoring him and him threatening to end his life, I decided that I just needed to break up with him at that point. So I went to his house to collect my things that I didn't grab the last time that I was there because I was in a hurry to get the f out of his house. Anyway, so I go to his house and I walk into his room, which he had left the door unlocked for me to get in, and there laying next to him was a naked girl. And I hate to sound rude or even talk about somebody's appearances, as I am not no Victoria's Secret model myself, but this girl, honestly, she looked his type. She was super unhygienic, like she looked dirty. And she definitely looked like she slept with whoever and whatever would acknowledge her. Anyway, so I quickly grab my things, and as I'm beginning to leave, of course, he wakes up. And to be honest, I'm not even gonna lie, I didn't care that he was cheating on me. Like, if anything, I was thankful. Yes, you heard that right. I was thankful. Because now I felt like I had a reason to break up with him without feeling guilty or caring. Honestly, I was more mad about the fact that he didn't use a condom with me, especially if he was doing this shit all the time. But anyways, like I said, I was relieved. And then, of course, Colton chases after me, but I made sure this man did not catch me. I left and then I texted him that I was done and I blocked him on everything. Finally, after 2 months, I felt free. Like, I felt like I had just been released from prison. Best day of my life, or so I thought. Now that you guys have the backstory of me and Colton, let's get into how this man ruined my life and my safety forever. So about 2 months after him and I had broken up, that is whenever the cyber and physical stalking started. Now, from 15 to 18 years old, I had worked at this gym, the same gym that he would show up to make sure that I was actually working. Well, on Tuesdays, I would work until close, and there was rarely anybody left in the gym at that time. And the gym was open till usually around like 11 o'clock. But like I said, at that time, it was usually just super quiet, super isolating. Well, that night, there happened to be somebody in the gym while I was closing. And all of a sudden, I hear the front door open. And I go to tell this person that, hey, like, unfortunately, we're closing in 10 minutes. You gotta go. But then I noticed the person who walked in was Colton. And as soon as I saw that it was him, I ran into the nearest supply closet, locked the door, and while I was running to the supply closet, he was chasing me. And once I locked myself in there, he is banging on the door, begging me to talk to him. And I'm like screaming at him that if he doesn't leave, I'm gonna call the police. So I begin to dial 911 when all of a sudden I hear one of the members of the gym, the guy who was still there, that he needed to leave me alone. And if he didn't, he was gonna get physical. So a few moments later, you know, the member comes over to the door and he's like, hey, he's gone if you wanna come out. And thankfully he waited for me to close up and he walked me to my car. And I get in my car, lock my doors, I signal to him that I'm good and he can go. And so he drives off. I'm getting myself situated in the car. I'm texting my parents. And as I was about to leave, I hear a knock on the window. And it is Colton trying to rip open my car door. So I step on the gas, reverse the car, and flew out of that fucking parking lot. I was so shaken up, I didn't tell anybody what had happened to me. And honestly, I'm so thankful because from that day on, that same guy who was at the gym that night would come and wait until I closed up to make sure that Colton didn't show up again. And to my knowledge, he never did show up again. So throughout the next little while, Colton was trying to get a hold of me using fake numbers. Like, I was having to block a new one every single week. And this went on for about like 6 months. Well, then eventually his messages stopped for about 2 months. And, you know, I was finally in college in a completely different state. And I had actually eventually met a really nice guy who I had ended up dating for about 3 years in college. But he was an absolute angel. He was super put together. He came from a prestige family. He was tall, smart, had money to pay for our dates, and he loved spending time with me. Now, I don't want you guys to sit here and think that money was everything to me, but like, let's be honest. Like, a relationship is 50-50. Like, I get it if you're going through a rough time, but I'm not about to sit here and be manipulated about money. And that is definitely the next thing that I'm going to look for in a relationship, is somebody who also wants to contribute to a relationship. I'm not a sugar mama. Like, go look for that shit somewhere else, because you're not gonna find it here.
Be fucking for real.
Anyways, after being in such a toxic relationship, I think one of the things that I valued most in our new relationship and that I just really liked was that we were separate people. Like, we could spend time with our friends without letting it affect our relationship. We didn't have to be with each other 24/7. In all honesty, I would say that this was the first guy that I had ever loved. But that's enough about this guy. We're here for the crazy shit, I know. Hold on, we're gonna get back to the psycho. Anyway, so about 2 weeks into college, I get a text from a random number. Obviously it was Colton, and he was saying that he wanted to mend things with me. He wanted us to start a family, and he also knew where I was. And then he had also told me that he was going to move to where I was, so that way I would have to get back together with him, and that he was going to SA me so that way we would have kids together.
Why are you weird?
Yeah. I ignored his messages throughout the week, which consisted of him making death threats towards me and himself. But after a week of that, I didn't hear from him again, so I had thought that maybe he got the hint. So about 4 weeks into college, I had went out the one night with my new man, and we had took our first pictures as a couple, and neither of us posted them. You know, we just kept them for ourselves for our first memory of our first party together. But I woke up in the morning to messages from Colton saying that he saw my new boyfriend and he's going to kill him. And I'm immediately thinking to myself, how the fuck does this psycho know about my new boyfriend? Nobody, including myself, has ever posted any pictures of him anywhere. Like, there were no pictures of him and I anywhere on the internet together. Also, the only social media that my boyfriend had was Snapchat. Like, he was super off the grid, didn't have Instagram, Facebook, none of that. So then again, I ignore his death threats to me, and I'm just sitting there thinking he's bluffing. He just thinks that there's a new guy. He doesn't actually know. Also, his messages were always so sporadic. They were never consistent, you know. Like, sometimes I would hear from him for a week straight, and then other times I wouldn't hear from him for days, weeks, or months at a time. So, you know, as time's going by, my boyfriend and I were doing super good together, and my college experience so far was amazing. And I want to say that it had been about 5 months since I had started college, and I hadn't really been hearing from Colton, thankfully. But one day, I started receiving calls from his mother, his grandmother, and his friends. And the weird part was they all thought that they were calling Colton. Multiple times I had to explain to these twats that they weren't calling Colton. Clearly they had to be typing in my phone number if I keep getting all the fucking calls. Because how else would I keep getting phone calls from them? How else would it be me every time answering the damn phone? So at this point, I'm thinking to myself, this is definitely a prank. But then one of his friends even shows me screenshots that it was in fact Colton's number that they were calling. And I'm so confused because what in the black magic shit is going on here? How could they be typing in his phone number when I'm getting all the calls? Doesn't make any sense. Like, even his grandmother in her late 80s thought that she was calling him. So I began to feel super uneasy. I opened up to my roommate about this, and I told her about everything that I had gone through. And the next time that she saw my phone ring, she picked it up and she was like, don't ever call this number ever f***ing again. But his friends apologized, you know, they really think that they're calling him, which they were. Because I began to panic and I called my dad and my mom telling them about this. So my dad quickly runs over to our phone company to figure out if this was a prank or not. He was like, you know, are they using some type of app, or, you know, is something wrong with my daughter's phone? And to his surprise, when he walked in there, he saw Colton working at the one desk. So my dad immediately asked for the manager, who actually happens to be a longtime friend of my dad's. And my dad explained the whole situation to him. So the manager looks into the system and he found out that Colton somehow managed to connect our phone numbers. This man was putting more effort into stalking me than he did our entire relationship. Oh, but that's not the worst part. He connected our phones 6 months ago. Oh, and you think that's bad? That's not the worst part either. Not only was he receiving all of my text messages and being able to listen to every single one of my phone calls, but he also was able to mirror my phone onto his. He could see everything that I was doing at all times. All the Snapchats that I took, my Instagram, my FaceTimes, my location, etc. Obviously, Colton was immediately fired, and the manager thankfully was then able to do everything that he did to my phone. Not gonna lie, I'm not no lawyer, but I think that this is grounds for suing. Just saying. Anyway, so then the manager advises us to also call the police because this is known as like cyber stalking or something. So, you know, the police go to his house, they talk with him. Thankfully, the following week, they provide a restraining order, which not only did it include him having to stay a certain distance away from me, but he also had to not communicate with me over the internet either. I was relieved, but I also felt violated. That for 6 months, he was reading all of my conversations with my boyfriend who I had sent nude pictures to, as well as also reading my conversations with my friends, family. I had just never felt so exposed ever in my life. So after I don't hear from Colton for over a year, I'm relieved that it was done and he was gone, or so I thought, because again, a year later, I was, I want to say, a sophomore in college when I received a message on Facebook from a girl in my town, and she was like a year or two older than me. But in the message, it said, Colton and I are broken up, so he's all yours. And I replied to her, I'm sorry, I don't know what you're talking about, and I don't know you. And then she sent me, quote, text messages that I have been sending Colton for over the past year during their relationship, asking if he would get back together with me, and him saying no and that he didn't love me anymore, and me saying, oh my God, please get back with me. This man was f***ing delusional, because like, what is wrong with you?
She need a lot of psychological evaluations.
So I told her that that wasn't me, and that I actually have a restraining order against that f***ing psycho. Anyways, fast forward 4 years, I haven't heard from Colton again, and I truly hope that he gets the help that he needs. And listen, I know for a fact that this man was definitely sick mentally, and I'm not gonna lie, I still do feel sympathy for that, but like the way that he changed my life for the worse is like, it was so awful because I was scared to date anybody. It caused issues in my relationship in college, ultimately leading to me breaking up with that guy that I was with because I wasn't able to trust him. I was scared of confrontation, and I felt the need to control situations because it made me feel like I had a little bit of power back from that toxic ass relationship. But yeah, after Colton, I never felt safe ever again. I'm constantly on alert whenever it comes to men and him. I refuse to move back home. And there were a lot of situations that had happened over the years that I wish that I could tell them all. But I just want to let all of you know, you're never alone. Someone, somewhere out there is going to be there for you to get you through whatever you are going through. And it could be the person that you least expect. And I wish that somebody had told me this when I was going through it, because I think it would have really helped. Later on, I did end up finding out that a lot of the things that Colton told me about himself weren't true. Like, he never had a brother. He was an only child, and the only reason why he told me he had a brother was because he wanted one. And he like created this fake imaginary brother persona person. He did a lot of drugs during and after and before our relationship. And I'm not talking weed, like I'm talking acid, cocaine, etc. He was also a huge drinker like his mom. That's no surprise. I mean, you're a product of your environment most times. It's hard to break out of that. He also had sex with multiple people during our relationship without a condom. And I immediately got tested after I found that shit out because absolutely not. Thankfully, I'm clean. Thankfully, because ew. And then he went on to fake a pregnancy with him and his new girlfriend on Facebook until she then probably noticed how crazy he was and finally broke up with him and exposed him and told everybody that she was never pregnant. He made the whole thing up. The only reason why I know this is because one of my aunts is friends with him on Facebook. But for a happy ending, I did end up finding the man that I'm going to marry after being together for over 3 years. Turns out he's Dave, the guy that I couldn't get over in high school and who led me to crazy Colton. And you know what? I've never felt more safe, loved, worshipped, and respected than ever. But yeah, we are engaged and we live together. And I know for a fact that if Colton ever tries to get in contact with me again, I'm confident enough to have the courage to remind him that he's nothing to me and he will never ever be anything to me. And the point of this story is just to put a reminder out there to all of you. If there are red flags, they don't even have to be red. Yellowish, red, orange, somewhere in between there, and you have a gut feeling about something, follow it. Even if you're not always right, it's better to be safe than sorry. And don't ever feel bad because of anybody else's situation. It's not your problem. You don't always have to be Captain Save-A-Ho. Be Captain Save Yourself. And if you ever feel unsafe, tell somebody. Don't keep it to yourself to try to protect that person. And I see so many people doing that, where they will go through so much hurt and they will be treated terribly by somebody just to protect that person. They won't tell anybody else. But if I had followed my intuition after the first time meeting Colton, my life probably would have ended up really different. But because of him, I have extreme anxiety and super screwed up flight or fight responses. Like, I won't do anything spontaneous anymore. I feel super uneasy about simple interactions with people. My trust and patience is very limited, and I became somebody that I never thought that I would be. But like I said earlier, I'm lucky enough that I found somebody so amazing. And on a lighter note, I am currently in law school to become a lawyer to help other girls who are dealing with any situations that are like mine. Okay, everybody, that is the end of today's story time. If you guys like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more, maybe hit that subscribe button down below. And if you want to know whenever I post my next video, make sure to click that bell. And if you guys want to send in your anonymous story time, or you want to know how to send in your anonymous story time, make sure to click the links down below in the description. Other than that, I will see you guys next Saturday with a new story time.